Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings, to the We Are Change Sunday News Show. And of course, I am joined by the one and only Jason Burmis. We're finally in the same cold, crappy, statist, third world nation known as New York City. New York. Exactly, New York. And in this video, we got your feedback from the last time we did a live stream. We're going to try to run through the most important stories that affect all of us and the world for the first 10 minutes of this broadcast, and then open it up to a wider dialogue about the issues and engage with you in, of course, the chat room on this particular video platform. And of course, Jason, I don't know if you heard, but the most important, the most relevant story that affects you and me and the majority of the public of the world is, of course, Tide Pods. Jason, give us your hot take on Tide Pods.
Let me tell you. Luke, let's just put it
We're not supposed to talk about Tide Pods. We're just joking. Listen, we got to get down and dirty here. YouTube has been playing dirty tricks. We got to play the dirty tricks with the clickbait. And that's why we named this video. What's the name of this video?
It's a live video, and it's Tide Pod Chelsea Manning Party. Tide Pod, yeah. Chelsea Manning Party.
We can't talk about the issues that we really want to talk about, or even put it in the description. So me and Jason just said, screw it. We're just gonna give them the best bang for their buck and play their game. So this is what we're doing. Okay, the second most important news story is, of course, Chelsea Manning went to a party. Jason, give us your hot take about that.
Again, Luke.
No, we're not going to talk about that at all. Let's actually get to some real news other than the ridiculous bullcrap distractions that keep inspiring other idiots to be idiots, because that's what the mainstream media, that's what even the alternative, a large portion of it, media does right now, is create other idiots by being idiots and covering idiotic stories. But here are actual stories that actually do matter. Jason, what's the first story that you got that really does affect all of us?
Well, I thought we were really going to talk about this Tide Pod party, my friend. I'm kind of upset. You know, it's really been the hot topic over at my job. But you know what? We will go with some real news, because a lot of people, Luke, they forget that James Clapper, head of the NSA at the time, how about that, in front of the Senate Intelligence Committee, looked everybody in the world in the eyes, Luke, looked them all in the eyes and said, we do not collect data on American citizens. He assured us of that, Luke. And what happened? Well, along came a little guy named Edward Snowden, and he leaked a bunch of documents, some of which we still don't have today, Luke. Some of which we still don't have today, okay? And it proved beyond a reasonable doubt, of fucking course they were. Yes, they collect everything. This is pre-9/11 as well, Luke. We know this, okay? We know about Hepting versus AT&T. If it's in the digital ether, they have this information. Now, what's so interesting about this Clapper story is it's 5 years later, Luke, and the man has been rewarded. And guess what's up? Those statute of limitations, those good old-fashioned American statute of limitations. If you're a good old boy in D.C., Luke, you got nothing to worry about. And he won't get charged for lying to Congress about spying on each and every one of us, Luke. But you know what? Russia, your take.
I mean, it's no surprise. It's the big old boys club where one hand washes the other hand. And of course, James Clapper, what was really interesting is that he kept going on the national stage and saying, no, the government is not spying on you. The government is not looking at your dick pics. They're not going through your sex with your girlfriend. They're not doing that at all. Then we had the leaks come out and totally proven, outright, documented wrong. Still, James, this guy, still, after all of that, he was like, no, we still don't spy on you. Again, just repeating that lie. And the fact that there is even statutes of limitations of lying to the American public, and the natural order selecting people, whether it's Michael Flynn caught lying, he's getting the full brunt of the law. This guy, the inner circle of the kind of upper establishment, getting away with it openly, shows you everything you need to know about Washington politics.
Well, Luke, I got to tell you, it really does show you that there is a boys' club out there that if you cover up for these people, if you toe the line, if you take the national security state stance, you will be rewarded and things will be forgotten. And that's why I am so still skeptical of this administration. And we're going to get into that story in a moment. And every administration, because it goes beyond the Bush administration, the Clinton administration, the Obama administration, and now the Trump administration. There was no real opposition in the so-called alternative media to the fact that they re-signed FISA. There was one guy out there in the Senate, Rand Paul, that stood up there and said a few things on Fox News early in the morning, but that's it. And now we look at this story over here where we have the NSA sincerely regretting, Luke. They sincerely regret that. What have they done? Oh, they've deleted all the Bush-era surveillance data that it was ordered to preserve. Oh, we deleted it. What's your take on that? Because I don't know.
Well, that's bullcrap. That is utter bullcrap. Just like the government said, we're not spying on you, and then later it came out that they were spying you, and they still said, no, we weren't spying on you. This is the same thing. What is convenient for them, they will do, because there is no oversight. There is barely any accountability when it comes to our elected representatives, and they're able to get away with atrocious, horrible acts. I mean, it's been documented. NSA agents were personally trading nudes of other people that they randomly intercepted, abusing their powers. I personally confronted General Hayden, the former head of the CIA and the NSA, and I asked him, you had employees under your own network collecting citizens' nudes and trading them, and you're telling me you're not spying on us. And he literally just ran away like a chicken, bobbing and weaving away in the Washington Capitol building. I chased him all the way to the taxi. He got very uncomfortable, but of course, everyone loved the video. But again, just moving on to the next story, I think Glenn Greenwald really kind of hit the nail on the head with the article that you found, Jason, where he's talking about now the release the memo hashtag that has been going out everywhere. And we've been hearing scatters about what Trump will do. The alt-right and the people on the right are saying he's going to supposedly release this memo. But for the people out there, Jason, can you explain what is this supposed memo that everyone's talking about right now?
Well, here's the deal, Luke. Release the memo hashtag, and this is gaining huge traction in big alternative media, okay? And Republicans in the government that have read this thing, they're coming out and saying things like, this is bigger than Watergate, and, you know, this is the proof that the FBI was spying on Trump. First of all, if you had a brain in your head and you paid attention to what was happening during the election and just mainstream media reporting, Luke, of course they were wiretapping Trump. Of course they were using FBI resources against Trump. They
wiretap everyone.
Exactly. Exactly. It's not really news. Now, what the hype around this is that this memo now exists. Now, they make an amazing point here. And say what you want about Greenwald, I think he's up there with Assange, if not better, because he digs in and does the investigative reporting. I mean, God bless things like WikiLeaks, Luke, but the bottom line is, without a person like Greenwald, this would not be in the public ether, if you will, okay? Now, he makes great points here. This memo supposedly shows the evidence in which they were wiretapping Trump. Now, he says not only release the 4-page memo, but release all the evidence that they used to make this memo, so we're aware of these techniques that are being used against us. And he makes the point why they may not do it and why they would be frauds if they do not do this, Luke. And that would be that they'd have to give up their own tricks of the trade, wouldn't they?
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of those tricks actually came out with the Edward Snowden leaks, and that was what the NSA was really angry about, is their techniques were released to the general public, and they were extremely sneaky and underhanded on how they intercepted, lied to you, used propaganda, and used your own tools against you in the most devious, corrupt ways. So, I mean, obviously, there is so much power and potential when it comes to being at the head of the highest office in supposedly the world, the U.S. government. We know that there is so much authority that this brings up to a very kind of hard decision that Trump has to make. Does he keep this power and have this power now that he is head of state? Or does he release it and say, hey, this was used badly against me? And obviously, the morally right thing to do is for Trump to come out and say, look, here's the memo. Here's how they spied on me. This is wrong. This is corrupt. And this is illegal. And this needs to stop immediately. Will he do that? To be honest with you, I don't think so. Just looking at his decisions politically that he has been making, especially a lot of the egotistical decisions that he has been making, I highly doubt that he will release the memo. If he does, he will, of course, gain my respect.
Well, you know what? Let's get the memo, but just as he said, let's get the evidence that led to this memo. Let's make it public. And I'm very skeptical, and I think that we all need to be very skeptical because, again, we were promised all of the JFK files, weren't we? And to this day, we still don't have them. There's, what, 3 months left on that, Luke? Time flies when you're having fun. So we'll see what happens in 3 months, but we know what to look for there. The DeBruy Memorandum, the initial FBI report on that is 800 plus pages long, better be amongst those declassified documents. And if he was true to his word, they would have been delivered that day. So my skepticism still reigns hard. If he's so hell-bent, if you will, on exposing the deep state, there would have been no better way to do it than release those documents. And talk about the release of documents, man. We're not getting many document releases on this whole Vegas situation. And that brings us to our next story, Luke. And, you know, it's kind of a big one. It's kind of one that we have to continue to talk about because I smell a rat there too, but I don't smell a rat like this congressman in Pennsylvania. And for the audience right now, I am going to actually play just the part of this congressman on Tucker Carlson, okay, and his assertion that he's seen evidence, Luke, that the Las Vegas attacks had to do with ISIS. So we're going to go to that clip right now.
Well, I smell a rat like a lot of Americans do. Nothing's adding up. It's been 4 months, as you said. We don't even, the man's dead. They said he's a lone gunman, lone shooter, yet we can't get the autopsy results. But even more troubling than that, recently I've been made aware of what I believe to be credible evidence or credible information regarding potential terrorist infiltration through the southern border regarding this incident.
Terrorist
Yes, sir.
connections.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so what's the outline of that? What would that
Well, they could be, well, let's face it, ISIS twice before the attack. ISIS warned the United States that they would attack Las Vegas, I think in June and August. And then after the attack, claimed responsibility 4 times. Meanwhile, the local law enforcement investigative services are telling us there is no terrorist connection.
All right, so now let me give you my take on that clip right there. Now, this congressman is coming out and saying that southern border terrorist connections to Las Vegas and that ISIS twice before the attacks came out and said this. Now, by all eyewitness accounts, there is something else going on, especially at the Tropicana. But you know what there is no evidence of? A fucking ISIS connection. We haven't seen any evidence of that, and I'm telling you right now, there is something very wrong here, but they should be looking at the Mandalay Bay itself. They should be looking at this arms dealer connection, and we're going to get to another story that we're going to look at as well. They need to be looking at that, but they don't want you looking in that direction, Luke. Instead,
Jason,
they want you to look in the direction of the boogeyman, ISIS. Bum, bum, bum!
You broke 2 rules there, Jason. Number 1, you cursed. Number 2, you're breaking off the official narrative that this guy wasn't a Mexican ISIS Antifa member, and this is bad for business, Jason. We're supposed to stick with the story that the Las Vegas shooter was a Mexican ISIS Antifa member. I mean, okay, see, this is what's happening here. There's ridiculousness on all sides, and I think we could all agree there's a lot of dumbassness out there. A lot of people, because the government is not being transparent. they're changing their story about exactly what happened with the Las Vegas narrative. They can't get their story straight. And because of that, people are opportunists taking advantage of that. And they're saying, well, let's just work this out for what it works in my best political opportunity and say that he's a Mexican ISIS Antifa member. And this to me is just as ridiculous. And I'm very happy you brought this up and we're talking about this right now, because again, to me, both sides are extremely wrong. We need more accountability. We need more answers, especially from Las Vegas. But let's not jump to conclusions, especially into places that work into the benefit of a greater political ideology that some people are trying to push.
Well, that's exactly right. It sure gives us an excuse to be in Afghanistan, in Syria, in Iraq, talking about going in Iran, backing Saudi Arabian coup d'etats that sure look like they have a Goldman Sachs connection. I don't know, Luke. It's a little bit ridiculous to me. And I got to say this. I don't think that this sheriff is being upfront. I think, by the way, in this new press conference, Luke, I think it's worth noting that he made sure, he told it was by design that they did not have the FBI or the district attorney sitting there. Now, he was extremely nervous when he first began, and when he was asked about that very clip, he said he would like to see that evidence. Now, he also said some other interesting things. He said that their investigation was bifurcated after they found the lone suspect dead in the room. Okay, what does that tell you? That tells me they didn't look into any other avenues. He also didn't talk about the fact whether he'd even looked at any surveillance footage, which we know there is a massive amount of. All right? Now, what do we know out of this? We know that they may charge somebody else in another crime in conjunction to this. Now, earlier in October, one of his brothers, not the brother that was on television giving the press conferences, but one of his brothers was actually arrested for child pornography. Now they're making the claim that the computer, but remember, the police initially said in their first interview there were several computers in there, not just one. I want to make that point. But on one of these, it seems like there was also child pornography. So now you have to ask yourself, is there another connection? If this guy's doing something in the millions and millions of dollars, such as possible arms trafficking, see, this is real discussion about what's out there, real investigative journalism, not just jumping on a bandwagon and saying ISIS. Because again, there are a lot of credible reports out there that things happened at New York, that definitely something happened at the Tropicana. But none of that leads to some kind of an ISIS terrorist attack, Luke. And I think we need to look at the avenues that are out there, because we know a lot of information does leak into the public. You can't keep everything silent. There are good people out there. There are people that want to get to the bottom of this, but you can't just jump into something that may, first of all, these sources that a lot of these people have may be leading them down a dark and wrong disinformation path, Luke, correct?
Again, it's Mexican ISIS Antifa, Jason, and people are eating Tide Pods. That's what we need to stick to and talk to. We got a lot of interesting super chats. We're going to get to them in just a little bit. But you bring up a very good point, especially when we get into child predators and pedophiles. This usually leads to the upper echelons of government and society. And I think the discussion needs to kind of go there, especially with how secretive and just crappy the Las Vegas police department and the FBI are being when it comes to this very important mass shooting that has affected our American history. So this is something that we need to pay attention to, and I'm very happy you're here to bring up those very important updates, because I could see why some people are making the conclusions. We have a new article up right now that we covered previously before on this YouTube channel, talking about how international arms watchdogs are finding out that most of the weapons that radical Islamic terrorists, ISIS, were purchased, of course, by the United States and Saudi Arabia. Now that ISIS is being almost completely and utterly wiped out and destroyed, mainly because of the Iranian, Russian, Syrian government forces, because of that happening, they're able to finally come into these territories that ISIS previously held before, and they're like, oh, made in the United States, made in Saudi Arabia. So I understand why people are making the jumps to conclusions. This is something that really is happening. And I don't know about you, Jason, but hearing all this like latest news about the government shutdown kind of makes me happy, unlike a lot of other people who are panicking that the government is shut down for the last day and a half or 2 days.
Again, this government shutdown's kind of a joke, isn't it, Luke? I mean, if we're talking government shutdowns, let's talk about the fact that, again, ISIS has American weapons driving in white Chevy trucks and a lot of members that have red beards and American accents, Luke. It's kind of wild, but for some reason...
That the State Department ordered.
But again, it's kind of wild when I say to myself, well, our original foreign policy based in bombing places like Afghanistan and Iraq was based in a lie on 9/11 and weapons of mass destruction, so that's not valid. And here we are, Luke, over 15 years later, on the cusp of almost 20 years later, and we've added Syria to that mark. We're marching the drums against North Korea, which is just mind-boggling. Meanwhile, you know, that's something we should talk about eventually. The fact that Korea is going to have this unified team, and the Olympics are in Seoul, Korea this year. So yeah, it's almost like a perfect psyop storm. If you don't think there's some kind of a network to propagandize there, you are out of your mind, because there's a lot of things going on geopolitically right now, especially in the Middle East. You look at that Saudi Arabian coup. You look at this arms deal. You now look at what's going on in Turkey, Luke, and why don't we get to that? Because,
I mean,
again, government shutdown.
This is a crazy story.
Yeah.
I think a lot more important than Tide Pods and Chelsea Manning going to a freaking party, which makes no sense at all. Since we're learning that just moments ago, missiles actually hit a Turkish town near the Syrian border and has killed civilians. There's an open war and a conflict that has been happening for a very long time within the Turkish-Syrian border, dealing with specifically the Kurds, that is escalating on grand proportions right now. So we're seeing rockets being launched back and forth between the Kurds, who were previously armed by the United States, which the United States gave missile to, gave protection to, protected them from the Turkish government. And now, just as of a few months ago, the United States flipped their alliances, let the Kurds be on their own, and now have officially joined the Turkish government with their war and continuation of war against the Kurds. So we just saw the United States use the Kurds to supposedly fight off ISIS and to be a counter against the Syrian government. Now the United States threw them away, all under the Trump administration. Now we are supposedly more aligned with Turkey. Turkey is still playing favorables to Russia. Again, this is a very complicated situation that I'm trying to simplify as much as I can. But again, what's happening right now is we're seeing Kurdish missiles flying into Turkey. We're seeing Turkish warplanes pound Kurdish positions and pound the Syrian territory, to the point where even the Syrian government is coming out and responding and saying this is a very grave escalation and aggression against our country. So we're seeing the Syrian government actually stand up for the Kurds, which is, again, very weird. The shifting of dynamics is extremely accelerating, especially within the Middle East, and the tensions are soaring, as we're seeing even Syria coming out and saying, Turkey, stop your bullcrap. The United States, stop your bullcrap. And even as of just a few moments ago, just as of January 18th, the Syrian government responded to the Turkish government, to the American government, and saying that they would now shoot down planes if they were attacked, and they were attacking Syrian government territory. Hold on, Jason. I got to change my battery. My camera died.
Okay, we are going to be back with Luke Radowski in a minute. But again, there's so much going on in Syria. There is just, you'd think that we would be able to, as an American people, stop an act of aggression that has no validity whatsoever, yet we still haven't seen any evidence. Not once but twice Assad supposedly gassed his own people. And Russia came back in. Okay, they started destroying portions of ISIS. They tried to bring in peace. They've done very well militarily there, yet we're still trying to take out Assad. It was never to take out ISIS. And that is the goal. They don't like Syria's alliances. They see it as a strategic point, and they will continue to produce unrest in that country until, again, we as a people come together and say, hey, our foreign policy in the Middle East, especially in places like Afghanistan, Iraq, Syria, Saudi Arabia, and Iran, is not only uncalled for, but needs to end. And we have to start doing real diplomacy with these countries instead of blowing them up, Luke.
Well, duh. It just makes sense. You don't hit a hornet's nest and expect peace and tranquility on the world stage. It's not going to happen. So we're 25 minutes in. That was a couple of news stories that we covered. We got to get better at this, Jason. We got to be quicker. That's some of the comments that I'm seeing here. Get to the news quicker and then open it up to a larger discussion. And, of course, we have some super chats, which, of course, we will be answering first. And the first one is a $2 super chat by Ashley Sargonite, and she's saying, Jason, please say the F word one more time.
What's that? What F word?
The F word. She spelled it out. I'm not saying it. I'm not saying it.
I took my nieces to Sweet Frog today.
The other super chat that we got is Luke, say mangina, and you will make bank in the chat. And that was a $5 super chat that is continuing the very serious and professional discussion that we're having about Tide Pods and Chelsea Manning on this YouTube channel.
Tide Pods and Chelsea Manning, my friend.
Oh, no, I'm serious. It's just incredible. I wanted to talk to you about this, particularly, Jason, because after the Las Vegas shooting, I made a very important video talking about how psychologically the news coverage of these mass shootings creates more mass shootings. It is predictive programming and psychology that inadvertently or even on purpose the mainstream media uses and inspires other mass shooters to be committed all around the United States. What do you think about that? And of course, we got more super chats. We got another $2 one saying, "Don't sell out. That's for manginas."
Oh boy!
We got another $20 super chat for you saying what was it? Fuddruckers? You said Fuddruckers or something.
I got $20 to say that. Well, when I'm emotional, listen, the bottom line is I'm a real person, Luke. And in real life, I do use that kind of language. I try to curb it a little bit here so that YouTube does not have the excuse to demonetize us. I use it a little over on Facebook because there is no monetization process. But listen.
It's not even monetization. It's just like I got a bunch of, I remember meeting some of the watch this channel, and they were like a conservative family in Texas. I came down to Texas randomly, and I was just like, hey, I want to check out Texas. I landed without a plan, put up a Facebook post. This family meets me out there within an hour after a Facebook post, right? They're like, Luke, I appreciate you. Here is a Bible. Here is the keys to the truck, and here's the handgun. You're a part of the family now. And we sat down, told each other grace, and I spent time with this random family that I never knew before. And we talked about it, and they, didn't let their kids watch the channel because of the cursing. And they didn't want their kids cursing, and they were like, a lot of kids watch this channel. And they were like, if you, stop the cursing, which I did a lot, they would continue watching this channel. So, demonetization, we're getting demonetized and screwed and kicked in the balls by the YouTube corporatocracy anyway.
Well, you know what? Let's talk about that.
It's not about that. It's more about just like trying to be the change that you want to see in the world and trying to, and it's fun to to curse like in an old way, to say, you biscuit eater, or you, what else is a good old person? What was it? Malarkey and hooey and, I don't know. Give me your favorite old people chat curse word in the chat.
I don't know that I have any. There was a lot of cursing going on in my life when I was a child. Anyway.
Same here. I grew up in Brooklyn, and it was F this and MF for that, and the teachers were doing it. The grown-ups were doing it. I heard it all around me, but I just had more fun saying biscuit eater and fud. Than I do everything else. And we got another $2 super chat saying shut the front door. That's an okay one. I don't mind that one. Jason, your comments on shut the front door and Tide Pods.
It was kind of like a funny joke maybe on some comedy movies that were for the family, I don't know, like 7 years ago. That's got to be 7 years old at least, maybe 10 years. I feel like maybe even high school, we're old. That could be 20 years old, Luke. All right, listen, let's get back to
we're not with the Tide Pods. We're not eating Tide Pods on camera. We're doomed, Jason.
I got to get a new
Dag
new mic
Nabbit.
stand.
There you go. Dag Nabbit, Jason.
Dag Nabbit is one? I mean, I watched the Little Rascals too.
Goobshite. Oh yeah, I say shite instead of the other one.
Yeah, same.
I think that's okay. Is that all right?
I don't think so. It's Scottish.
Oh, Lordy.
It's the same exact thing.
No.
Yes.
It's not in your language. Or I cursed in another language. I curse in Russian to make all the conspiracy theories go wild sometimes on this channel too.
Jason Burmis, F you. I'm reading some of these. Well, you have a pleasant evening too, sir.
I love the comment section. I love our audience. I love participating with them. We're reading your comments right now and talking to you directly one-on-on.
Yeah, now's the time to actually ask something.
You think that's bad? You think someone saying F you is bad, Jason?
No.
I got that's like a compliment that you're going to get, especially on this just platform. Just in general, if you look at YouTube comments, wow. They are artistic, to say the least.
Oh, they're artistic, all right.
Tide Pods are as good as fluoride, vaccines, and mercury. All right, so if you guys have any questions, directly talk to me. But I wanted to come back to the original point, whether you think mainstream media deliberately or inadvertently programs their content to inspire more mass shootings. When we were talking about the Las Vegas one, ending that kind of discussion.
I don't know that they do. I think that they know that it gains a lot of views. It gains a lot of talking points, a chance to grab attention. So, in other words, a chance to make a profile for themselves outside of the network too. You know what I'm saying, Luke? And then on top of that, I think there is an encouragement to run those stories by their sponsors. Their sponsors want those stories because they're often medicating these people, and they want more people on these medications. And unfortunately, the medications are the things that are often making them homicidal, suicidal. Forget about just mass shootings. I read a lot more of like people taking out their entire families and then killing themselves. And that to me is just so tragic, because I wonder, everybody struggles, Luke, and personal relationships can get very tough. But I wonder if those people weren't put on psychotropic medications, would they have just made the decisions to move on with their life or get out, or maybe even take their own life? Who knows, from depression? But would they have killed their entire family? Nothing makes me more upset than to read those type of things, and then somewhere in the article you read that this person was suffering from depression, and that 99.9% of the time means that they were prescribed these drugs, Luke.
Yeah, I know someone very close to me that's a good friend of mine that had their child die because of these pharmaceutical drugs that mess with your brain chemistry, that ultimately make you a zombie, that try to condition you and try to manipulate your brain chemicals. So I knew someone whose child died because of these pharma meds, and it's just incredible seeing this link continue on, especially when it comes to all these mass shootings, these mass attacks, because, and it's hard not to say that it's not a conspiracy, because you're seeing these effects. You're seeing majority of these mass shootings being on these big pharma medications, and they're still being pumped out there to you. Psychologically, the mainstream media is still inspiring other shooters to do this. I believe it was also Tylenol that was recently found out to clinically wipe out your empathy. Right now, in the United States, in the Western world, we are dealing with an extreme empathy epidemic, which is going down dramatically and is at its lowest in almost human history. Depression, stress is on its way up. Unhappiness is increasing in this world. So knowing that, see, you could either go two ways here. You could say it's an accident and it's the markets deciding it, and it's sensationalism that's driving it, or you could say that these people are directly responsible, they're at fault, and they're doing it deliberately for profit or even satanic purposes, which we know some politicians do worship Moloch and other satanic entities, like we learned through the whole spirit cooking thing. I think what I strive to do is try to make you guys figure out that on your own instead of telling you definitively what it is, because I don't think anyone knows definitively what it is.
Well,
what do you think?
Well, I'll tell you what, if you want to get into that realm, like, you look at some of this stuff and it's dark beyond all belief, right, Luke? You just can't believe that some of these things are possible by another human being, because you don't think that way, you don't feel that way. But a lot of these people, for instance, that end up being at least accused of this stuff, because there's not much evidence out there other than, I mean, if you look at the Jimmy Savilles of the world, you look at the Heaths of the world, now they've been outed as pedophiles. You know, Seville also outed as a necrophiliac, you know, somebody that raped children in hospice centers. That, and remember, this is the same guy that's standing next to the prime minister, hobnobbing with the royal family, has giant checks for children. He's a TV personality. He's somebody who's very much in the public arena. Now, we did this video recently, the Chappelle video, and we could even work this into kind of the monetization thing, where he kind of alludes to something more going on in Hollywood, not just the rapes. And he openly talks about, you know, the 14-year-old that Kevin Spacey was with, and he talks about the 15-year-old girl incident with R. Kelly. Now, I gotta wonder, did he not only see that in Hollywood, but one of these dark ritualistic abuse? And I don't necessarily believe that a lot of the people that are practicing this believe in Lucifer, if you will, as an actual entity. Perhaps some of them do, or any of these other quote-unquote demonic forces, Luke. However, I think that they get a rush from it, and they do think it brings them power in some respect, you know, aside from that rush. They see these practices, and they, in their belief system, that it's almost kind of like a alchemaic effect for them. Like this occultism actually works, and that there's a lot of different brands of this. You and I both know it. You know, for instance, the spirit cooking thing you're talking about was originated by a quote-unquote performance artist, Marina Abramovic.
Predominantly, also, people don't, when they see themselves doing something bad, they don't see it as doing something bad. They kind of justify it in other ways. So I believe there is definitely some truth in the middle. I believe there's some people who are not caught up in this like larger satanic order. I do believe there's an element of that that does need to be addressed, that should be talked about, that is not talked about, that is being censored and protected by, of course, the mainstream media. But ultimately, the truth is going to be decided by everyone, and having these discussions is extremely important for everyone to have, in bringing out the possibilities, laying out all the evidence out there, and letting you decide what you think has happened. We got a very interesting question. I think I'm going to let you have this one first. It's a hard one. The question is, Luke Jason, if you were going to lead a country, what would it be, and what reforms would you do?
All right. First of all, it would be this country, because I actually do love this country. And the
statist.
Oh, you could call me what you want. Yeah, you're right. I am. Listen, I don't believe that we can live in some kind of utopian Peter Joseph Zeitgeist wonder world. However, I do think that there are a lot of things in there that we could utilize in this society that would be extremely beneficial. Let me go over some of them, Luke. First of all, the Constitution and Bill of Rights is a living document for a reason. It's a good living document. If you cut out the national security state that we've become, well, all of a sudden things change. If we go back to being a constitutional republic, so how do we do that? The first thing is, let's get rid of all these unconstitutional practices such as lobbyists. Number one, we take money out of politics. If you start taking private money as a public servant, you are fucking treasonous. You wanted me to curse? There it is.
No.
Okay? None of this backdoor dealings.
You commie.
Where there's money involved in politics, number one. Number two, okay, we get rid of Homeland Security, never needed it in the first place. Things need to be declassified out of the CIA and the NSA. Okay, we need to start talking about other technologies, other propulsion systems that we've had for decades. Now, let's talk about the Zeitgeistian, or what's the original, the Venus Project. Talked a lot of these before Zeitgeist did. So what do? Let's utilize the technology that we do know about. Let's take away, first of all, Eisenhower did some really good things as the president. Before he gave us that speech, Luke, he built the highway system. Well, isn't it high time that we built another type of mass transport system? If Japan can successfully use maglev trains, so could we. If we had those in city centers around the country, all of a sudden, you could have a job halfway across this country you could commute to in less than an hour, and it would change the way the economy worked. Then skill-based positions would be filled everywhere. Okay, what else do we utilize, Luke? Come on.
I can't believe you're such a socialist.
There's nothing socialized about that. That is capitalism right there, baby. We use the government for the taxes that we actually have, which is building quote-unquote roads and transportation places, because that's what is one of the tools that it's good for, Luke. Okay?
Yeah.
And then we build something that is infrastructure for the people. First of all, that's a program, much like Roosevelt's, Tarpley would have a hard-on for this one, much like the Roosevelt's Works Progress Administration, that would enable jobs out of that. Listen, I'm all about empowering people and moving technology forward, and we could do that so well with that. Using circular farms in cities. Like building those, absolutely. Why wouldn't we do that? Using 3D printing machines to build homes for people, absolutely. Using automation to empower, not enslave humanity. But first, before we talk about, and this was a great question, by the way, before we can even
disavow.
Okay, before we can even talk about any of these things, I think, the underlying power structure that has to change globally before we talk about taking over a country and running a country, the idea that has to change is we have to crush the crown, Luke, and get rid of royalty. The idea that royalty exists on any level, that bloodlines determine who rules over other human beings in 2018 is absolute insanity, and oligarchs are a real thing. This ain't Game of Thrones, my friend. This is the real world. Luke Radowski, your answer, sir.
I think we should come to we have something like the hot dog just in Coney Island on 4th, but instead of hot dogs, it would be Tide Pods. The person who eats the most Tide Pods becomes the president of the United States and the ruler of the free world.
Well, it's a good thing that you just broke up so heavily on that one, because you really faded in and out for the audience, but there was a lot of talk of Tide Pods.
Okay. Okay, no, but seriously, I'm more of a voluntarist. I would definitely get rid of central banks. I would definitely have an isolationist, and I would definitely more rely on small communities deciding what's best for themselves. If a small community wants to isolate themselves and have a communistic or socialistic kind of infrastructure or way of life in their small kind of town, sure, do it, as long as it's done and doesn't violate the non-aggression principle. If someone wants to have a crazy anarcho-capitalistic society with his own group of people, sure, have it there. So I think decentralization of power, especially central power, is going to be a lot more effective in people becoming more responsible for themselves. It's something that, again, we could pinpoint, and it's filled with many inconsistencies, and that's why I really don't like to talk about my kind of philosophy, because I really don't have one. But I do kind of lean towards more of that kind of voluntarist kind of freedom, kind of liberty, self-determination, not having anything or anyone stand in your way, determining your future, your destiny. So I more lean towards that. It also is filled philosophically with a bunch of holes. I think I was poking you a little bit. There's also some holes in what you were talking about and how that would proceed and how that would run. But I think having these discussions is important. And even though I disagree with you on some points, Jason, I'm still happy we're able to have this dialogue and this kind of discussion, because I think the most common thread here is that we're looking for the best of everyone and away from the current system, which we could all agree is only in the benefit of the very few. And empowering and enriching the very few to a state which is going to be apocalyptic since the scales have shifted so dramatically, and we're living in a world where people are eating Tide Pods.
Oh boy, is that what we're ending on? Are we ending on that?
I think so. I think so.
I think that's the end, right? So, guys, as you can see, this is our second live stream. We're going to be doing it next Sunday. We do a daily drop over at Facebook. We give you reports all week long. It's only through your support that we're able to do this, and God bless you for it, because I obviously have a blast doing this stuff. But the bottom line is, we have to talk about this stuff because there is real news and real things going on that are either being marginalized to the extent where most people don't know about them or not discussed at all, Luke Radowski.
That's why next week we're going to be talking about gay frogs and Trump's prostitutes.
We'll see you
No,
then.
in all seriousness, we're going to talk about the real issues. Those are probably going to be the issues that don't get demonetized, that YouTube kind of promotes, just like they previously were promoting Jake Paul and all these other horrible ideas and horrible people who are promoting idiocracy and making it popular and making it sexful and making it empowering and enriching to the people who are the dumbest in our society. But we hope to change that. No one is perfect. I know we are working towards something totally different. So expect us to be back here next Sunday as we open up this discussion with you. Of course, eternally grateful for your super chats and you guys watching and spending your Sunday evenings with us. We will be back around the same time next week. Jason does these broadcasts on our Facebook page, which is in the description of this video. So if you want to see Jason break down the news that is happening every single day, go on our Facebook page, sign up, click up for notifications, and Jason does live videos, interacts with you with all the news happening as it's breaking almost every single day on our Facebook page. So we're of course going to be coming back here next Sunday. I'm going to be doing a lot of content this week. I'm looking for an editor, by the way. If there's an editor somewhere in New York City, I have way too many videos that I need to put out there. Hold on, getting another phone call from a person I told not to call me. Told you not to call me when I'm doing these live streams. We're getting distracted. I love you guys. Thank you again so much for watching and being here with us.